My next guest is the 57th governor of Missouri. We just saw him on the screen, Mike Parson. He currently co-chairs the Community Renewal Task Force at the National Governors Association, which has jurisdiction over a broad range of issue areas, including education. Governor Parson, great to see you. I just kind of connected you to my friend Brian Hendricks of Nokia. We're just sort of talking about not just education, but all of the kind of, broad elements in the sandbox, if you will, and why this is such a vital conversation, as we are deep into a pandemic, hopefully coming out. I just want to I'm now following you on Twitter, but you have, you just said all K through 12 educators and school personnel, including contract and temporary staff, will be eligible to receive COVID-19 vaccines in Missouri on March 15th. So that's a big jump forward, I assume, when it comes to a healthy educational infrastructure.
Yeah, we're really ahead of schedule on that, and we're so thankful for that here in this state. We're thankful that we are now second in the United States for the lowest positivity rate dealing with COVID-19. And a lot of that had to do with the balanced approach. We didn't shut our state down. We didn't do a lot of the mandates that other states did. We really had to be able to fight that COVID-19 along with keep our economy going. And education was just critical to that. Matter of fact, 95% of our schools are in classroom training as we speak now, and we're like sixth in the nation as far as getting our kids back into school. And then just really being able to deal with what we learned from a pandemic, to putting everything on the table, to realize what you did right, what you did wrong, and really depend on the data, our own dashboards here in our state, to really figure out how do we make adjustments to that. And I think so many of the things that we did prior to the pandemic, it seems like the pandemic leads the news all the time. But by putting workforce development in place, infrastructure in place, by working on broadband way before the pandemic had in our state, was critical. Although we need to do more. We've got to be able to do that in our state. But all the things we prepared for that day, and when it comes to the education arena, one of the things I'm a firm believer in is early childhood development. I mean, when you want to look at the correction facilities in our states, when you want to look at healthcare, when you want to look at all the things that cost so much money, it all starts with a kid. And you got to take care of that child from an early age and make sure they have some form of education that they can get through school and get into job training. And we've really just tried to focus on that to be a priority. But you literally, as a governor, have to make it a priority. And that's what we did with infrastructure and workforce development in place. And it's really turned out really good. And yesterday, I had a great time to visit some high schools in my state. Some of our what we call work-ready programs. We have about 12,000 students enrolled in that program this year. And these are jobs like IT, mechanics, welding, construction, all the things that they're going to need to go into the workforce when they get out of high school. And we put that plan in place several years ago, teaming up with our K through 12 schools, which we fully fund in this state, our community college, our tech schools, our training schools, and our universities. So a lot of things to do, but the whole basis of that was workforce development and infrastructure to move forward. And that's the secret to success. And I think we've been able to prove that here in the state.
Well, Governor Parson, another thing I've been kind of looking at is, okay, what's the secret sauce of some of the stuff you've been up to, and, looking at this. And what I see is you've invested, your budget invests, in these innovation teams in education. Is that part of the workforce and infrastructure side? Can you take us to sort of a couple of notches further and tell us about those innovation teams and, what they've generated, what they've created?
Right. Well, we go back to work ready where these high school kids get ready to go out there. That we've teamed up with our manufacturers, our workers, our CEOs, our corporations to know when they see that certificate means something. This kid really has done something in that. I also think a program that we started a little over 2 years ago that we're just now getting the data in to see who are really effective. But we did fast track here in Missouri. And what that really means is if you're 25 years and older, and maybe for whatever reason you started college, you dropped out, or you got married, or you went in the workforce, and you just didn't get the training you needed, we would actually start a program that we would bring you back into a community college, a tech school, a training school, and give you the ability to up your skills. And that's a state program that we're running here. We had no idea who would take advantage of that when we started that. But the reality of it was 80% of the people that got into fast track were women. And the vast majority of them were in the healthcare industry. So especially in the nursing field. So when the pandemic hit, we had no idea what those numbers looked like until afterwards. But we're so thankful we started programs like that and giving people the opportunity to up their skills. We recovered over 72% of our jobs in this state since the pandemic started. And not only that, we created 10,000 new jobs because of that workforce development pieces we had in there and the infrastructure, and $1 billion worth of new infrastructure, expansions of businesses here in this state, simply because we took a balanced approach and we had these things in place and we did not shut our state down. And so it's exciting for us. Things are going good. I mean, these are the good things you work hard for. And when you really get to see the results, that's what's exciting for us here in the state.
Governor, we're taking questions in the audience, but I want to squeeze in one more question to you. A lot of our focus this last year has been looking at the disproportionate impact that COVID has had on Black and brown communities. It's exacerbated economic divides, racial divides, and sometimes when you look at communities where things just aren't even. I'd like to kind of understand, as you kind of talk about the strengths in Missouri, have you been able to kind of blur some of those divides? Have you been able to end some of those divides? How, when you have approached inclusive workforce development, inclusive infrastructure, how do you see that scene of bringing everybody in under the tent?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you got to go back pre-COVID-19 to what is the relationship you built with those communities then. And I'm going to say COVID-19, a disproportionate of the African-American community, but I would say that in healthcare in general, when it comes to providing those services and realizing we've got to do more to make sure we get those services to the neighborhoods we need to get them to where they have access to it. One, for most of us, I think getting in a car and going 2 or 3 blocks is not a big deal. Some areas it is. So we got to figure out how we take those resources to them. And I think early on, I built a really good relationship with the clergy in a lot of our communities across our state, the urban leagues. We established relationships there and really just took a good, I want to say, the data approach to it and says, what is it we really can do that really moves the needle? And then how do you deliver those services? Now, if you want to get specific on COVID-19, early on, we knew that we were going to have to do something beyond the normal way that we give health care to a lot of people in our state. So when I called out the National Guard, when you hear a lot about mass vaccines, we actually did targeted vaccines where we put the National Guard members in 4-person teams where we could go in any neighborhood and we could do somewhere between 300 and 400 shots per day. But we could just literally send these units in there and target, whether it be the African-American community or just other communities of the homeless or the poverty side of it. Those are extremely successful of how you get to those resources. But I'm going to go back to what I said in the beginning. Why workforce development and infrastructure is so important. But it starts with the child. It starts with getting people educated and get them into the workforce. If not, you're trying to deal with them on the high end of healthcare, the high end of the criminal justice system. And those are the things you got to really do to move the needle in your states.
Well, Governor, we have a question for you from Gerald. Gerald?
Hi, my name's Gerald Angst. I'm a teacher at Cheltenham Elementary School in Cheltenham, Pennsylvania. And my question is, how can we rethink accountability to promote innovation and focus on expanding student potential instead of the deficit orientation we're currently operating under?
Yeah, well, I think, one, you got to analyze. You got to go back and retool what we do in education. You never take the same old for granted. And I think for us, I'll give you early childhood development here in the state of Missouri. If you look at it from the bureaucracy side, early childhood development was in 3 different departments, multiple divisions, and literally could not communicate with one another. That's government bureaucracy at its worst, to be right honest about. So we literally took a bold step and took early childhood development, put it under one umbrella, one agency, one department, one division, so we could make decisions out there. And we reevaluated that system. That model is the same model we need to use for sure through K through 12 to see what changes we need to make, what works, what don't work. And I think I've been very fortunate in this state where most people are buying into the workforce development pieces, the training pieces in K through 12. And most of the school systems are working with us. And I think realizing they got to change the way they do business. You just can't do again, you can't do the same old we've been doing if you want better results. So I think you're seeing the state pretty open to creative ideas, new ideas, and figuring out how do we deliver that education to the kids of our state.
Governor, in the American Recovery Plan, are the pieces in it that you need? Or do you have any constructive counsel for the Biden administration on any blind spots in that plan?
You know, I think the one thing, if you take a state like ours, we've been very fortunate. Financially, we're in a really good shape. We of course, we got to balance the budget every year by the Constitution here. We have a AAA bond rating, which we're only one of 6 states in the United States that has that financially. What I would really say to any administration, and whether it's the Biden administration or whether it was President Trump's administration, you know, give us the ability to invest the money at the state level. Give us the ability to make those decisions. And I guarantee you we will be much more efficient than what all the strings that are attachments on the federal government. When you try to make policy from the federal side, and you got to talk about states like New York or California or Illinois, anything, it's not the same as it is in our state. And the governors need to have that flexibility to be able to do that. So my message is always, you know, make your investments. I want the president to be successful. I don't care who the president is. I'm a military guy, so the commander-in-chief's the commander-in-chief, regardless of what his last name is. But I want him to be successful. But I also need to give them the opportunity to let us do our jobs at the state level, because we know how to handle these situations much better than the federal government. So we're always trying to be open to that. But, you know, we want to work with the federal government to do what's best for our state.
What service were you in, Governor?
United States Army, military police.
Okay, well, I'll let that go. I grew up as an Air Force brat and lived as a DOD dependent in a lot of places, but my dad was Air Force. But that's still cool. Well, I want to thank Governor.
Tell you, we always tried to slip into those Air Force bases to go eat because you got a lot better facilities than we had, I can tell you.
Well, thank you. Well, Missouri Governor Mike Parson, real honor to talk to you. I really enjoyed it. I hope we can continue this. I know you got a lot of issues to cover, but I could talk about, you know, early childhood development, you know, for ages, but many other issues as well. So thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it. Good luck, and so hopefully see you in person before long.
Absolutely.